Graylog is on a mission to make threat detection and incident response easier, faster, and more affordable. They help cybersecurity teams reduce risk across attack surfaces with SIM, log management, and API security solutions. Their newest offering, Graylog API Security, adds a new layer of defense by discovering rogue APIs, monitoring for threats from inside the perimeter, and providing detailed guided responses. Full fidelity capture of API requests and responses ensures you can perform complete investigations and meet regulatory requirements. Some popular and persistent API myths have almost become threats themselves. Go to securityweekly.com/Graylog and watch the video there to debunk the top 5 misconceptions surrounding API security. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Quick announcement here. Get ready for an electrifying experience at the 15th Annual Identiverse. Join 3,000 plus identity professionals at the Aria Resort and Casino in Vegas on May 28th through 31st, 2024, for 4 days packed with dynamic learning and collaboration. Don't miss out on keynote speakers including Danae DeFore, CISO of United Airlines, Tucker Bryant, entrepreneur and former Googler, George Roberts, Director of Identity and Access Engineering at McDonald's, and many more. As a community member, receive 25% off your Identiverse 2024 tickets using code IDV24-SW25. Register today at securityweekly.com/IDV2024. All right, this interview is sponsored by SentinelOne. Today's topic is leveraging generative AI to improve security operations. We're excited to have Ely Kahn, VP of Product Management from SentinelOne, with us today. Ely is VP of Product for both, or actually all three of cloud security, AI, ML, and core platform at SentinelOne. Previously, he was head of product for AWS Security Hub, and he was there because he was a co-founder at Squirrel, which was acquired by AWS and became Amazon Detective. Welcome, Ely.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. This is really at the core of a lot of what we talk about on the show. So I don't know if you've ever caught our news segment, but we go through all the new fundings, all the trends, all the companies coming out of stealth, and everything is all about automation and decision support and trying to predict exploitability of things, stuff like that. We don't get through. I don't think we get halfway through a security segment without 50% of it being on AI at this point. So this is really top of mind right now. And it seems like security operations is really where a lot of people are pinning their hopes for generative AI. Is that kind of the same feeling that you're getting from the market and from customers as well?
Yeah. So this is really, it's sort of the second wave of AI that I've
Right.
seen, and also the second wave of automation that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So, back in 2014, 15, you really had the explosion of startups using unsupervised machine learning, another form of AI, to detect anomalies in network and other types of
Mm-hmm.
traffic. You had folks like Securonics and even folks like Squirrel, my old startup, that were using, Spark and other types of machine learning platforms to find anomalies that were really tough to find before. And then, sort of around a similar time, you had the advent of SOAR platforms. Um, that really promised to automate many jobs within a SOC, and I would say with so-so success. And
Mm-hmm.
the exciting thing about generative AI, which is really the second wave of AI, is that we're seeing some of the promise of SOAR now being realized in a very different way. Without having to build playbooks and manage playbooks,
Right.
and
Python.
having the system really do it for you more automatically, which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like with each iteration of SOAR, it feels like we're on version 2 or version 3 of SOAR, looking at the startups coming out. Like they keep chopping down, cutting down on that friction. The amount of time it takes to build a playbook, the level of skills that it takes to build a playbook. Even integrating with your other tools seems like it's getting easier and easier every 4 years or so.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of it's this rebirth of the idea of autonomous security operations, which I think became a little bit buzzword because a lot of people were talking about it, and it didn't ever really fully realize because of the pain points you mentioned. It's just hard to build out these and maintain the playbooks. But what we're seeing with this new wave of generative AI capabilities is that you can ask this system to do things that were very manual and burdensome before. So, some of the ways that we're doing this at Sentinel One is through the concept of notebooks, which sound a lot like playbooks,
Mhm.
and allowing users to really simplify how they do hunts and investigations by asking natural language questions to the generative AI capability and letting it do the work for you. Letting it translate the commands from natural language to more structured query syntax, and also do a lot of the auto enrichment that you previously used a SOAR for. So enriching those queries automatically with threat intelligence or other third party sources to get to answers much more quickly.
And something you said there was interesting. It looks like Katie has a question, so I'll be quick with this and turn it over to Katie. But you talking about notebooks as opposed to playbooks, like they are very different. Like a playbook is mostly intended to be automated, which is one of the
Yeah.
things we're hearing a lot. But then the more we hear about generative AI, it's more of an assistive, more of a, talking about working in a notebook. It's still manual, but like a lot of the steps within that manual process are automated rather than the entire process being automated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just felt like I needed to uh, discuss that distinction a little bit there.
Yeah, it's an astute observation. So, uh, the first phase of generative AI, and what we've rolled out recently is, yes, more like guided notebook experiences where either you can ask a question or actually we'll also produce recommended starting questions. You get responses. We'll suggest additional questions for you to really guide you through that hunter investigation. But that's really the first step towards more systematic automation. In that, where we'll land by the end of the year is actually going beyond sort of that step by step guidance, assisted guidance, and instead just for each of your alerts, um, automatically generate the relevant questions to investigate that alert and automatically go and gather the responses or the evidence via an agent framework that's associated with our generative AI solution and package that all up for you automatically in a notebook. It's sort of a pre-calculated notebook that you don't have to populate, that the generative AI system will populate for you.
So that's a really
What
good segue into my question, actually. So, we've been hearing about automation and it's automation everywhere, right? But we also know that a lot of security practitioners are skeptical about automating anything. Is this partially an attempt to ease them into it? Because we talked a few weeks ago about demonstrating reliability, demonstrating appropriateness, and that's how security practitioners start to get more comfortable. So is what you're doing a purposeful method, or is it more of a training mechanism just so people can understand? Because you can create your own workflows, but we've been doing it in security for a long time, but it's onerous. It can be onerous.
Yeah. I'd say it's certainly a way for customers to get comfortable, but it's also a way for us, our AI engineering team to really learn what the best responses are. So, in general, we're picking things to automate that are relatively low risk. So, like conducting an investigation fully automatically is relatively low risk. We're not going out and changing firewall rule configurations or isolating endpoints or anything like that
You're not going to
at this
patch your
point.
servers automatically, like in the middle of the day, maybe 2 o'clock.
Right, right. We're not we're going to avoid anything that's going to brick a network. But every SOC is doing investigations, and for a typical SOC, this can be like over 1,000 alerts per day. And if you're a good analyst, maybe you can do one of those investigations in 20 minutes. So we're talking about hundreds of hours of investigation time
Yeah.
that we could per day that we could potentially shave off and allow folks to reallocate to higher value activities. And in terms of the glide path here that I described, like first we're starting with the suggested questions to investigate and allowing folks to like click on them if they think that they're good suggested questions. And there's a learning process built into our system. So, as we get more and more comfortable with the fact that our suggested questions are really good ones, then we will just start dynamically auto creating them and collecting evidence in the background, while you sleep, so that when you arrive in the morning, the investigation is prepared for you and you're just reviewing the work. There'll still be an analyst in the loop. We're not like fully eliminating the need
Of
for
course.
analysts. Like they should still go in and review the work and make the final judgment as whether this thing is a true or false positive and whether it needs to be escalated further. But we're trying to shave off a lot of that undifferentiated, searching that happens for in a data lake that happens for each alert.
Right. Of course, you're never going to get rid of the human intelligence because at the end of the day, if you let the machine make the decisions, it can't always make the best business decision. But this sounds like it's dog fooding in the best kind of way because the more customers you get, the more data you get, the more you see your customers doing certain things, trending data,
Yeah.
that helps the
Yeah.
community overall. Not that every answer is going to be right for every company or every situation, but best guess is better than, sticking your finger in the air and saying, all right, this is what it feels like today.
100%. And along those lines, what we've heard a lot about so far is sort of like these assistant style use cases, that are sort of like co-pilot style use cases. You know, we do want to move more folks to this autopilot mode where they're, the AI agents are doing things automatically on behalf of the customer. First lower risk things like investigations, but there's actually other applications of AI. We'll actually be showcasing some of this at the RSA conference in a couple of weeks. But there's a lot we can learn. So SentinelOne, we've got like 12,000 customers or so. There's a lot we can learn from those customers in terms of how they are adjudicating alerts and findings. So we're going to roll out some really modern forms of similarity analysis that use more modern AI architectures and actually show customers like, hey, um, the this alert is very similar to alerts that you previously adjudicated. It's also very similar to alerts that other customers have adjudicated. And here's how you did it previously, and here's how other customers did it previously. So this is like going beyond sort of the more traditional like k-means clustering approaches and using much more modern AI architectures. And the results are really exciting. Like we're getting some really exciting results from using that form of almost like crowdsourcing, but AI powered crowdsourcing, to also reduce the amount of work that analysts needs to do.
Yeah, it seems like there's just a ton of low-hanging fruit here. Like when you actually shoulder surf with an analyst or something like that, I imagine somebody sitting there with a clipboard, but I imagine a lot of this is digital at this point. You can see how people are using the product,
Yeah,
where you say, do you realize you do the same 7 things every time you see this alert? So why
yeah,
wouldn't you just, like we have computers and stuff, why don't we just do that before you need it done? Like, as
yeah.
soon
I
as
mean,
we see
this
that
is
alert,
where
we know what you're gonna need to do, so
This is where multimodal AI is getting really exciting. Like there's a bunch of research papers out there where folks are teaching AI systems like basically how to play video games
yeah.
and like breaking down the steps of a video game into behaviors that an AI agent can perform.
I've
And
seen some of that. Yeah.
it's really not that different for what a security operations center analyst does. So there's some really cool applications that we're working on in that arena.
Yeah, yeah, it's very neat. We use it a lot individually here on the show, and I found I've kind of retrained myself into I'd say roughly 75% of the use cases I would use Google for. I now use some kind of general purpose large language model service for that, and just saves me a ton of time every day, and I you know playing around with Zapier and some of those tools. There's a bunch of scheduled stuff and automated stuff that I can do, and it's really exciting seeing a lot of that come into security. And I think that is one of the big differences here with other technologies. Like the other times we saw, maybe not as much with automation. That's always been fairly accessible, but machine learning AI has not. And with ChatGPT, suddenly people were able to work on their imagination, say, can it do this? And it was almost free to just throw ideas at it and try stuff out, which in the past you had to be a data scientist, you had to know, you had all this knowledge that you needed before you could even approach trying out ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the amazing thing about these generative AI systems like Purple AI at Sentinel One is that anyone in the company can demo this thing. Like
Hmm.
it's like I bet even having like our recruiting team demo this to new recruits because it's so simple. It's so simple to use.
Yeah.
Um and it's and the simplicity, hides away, of course, or it, like is hides the magic behind it. But yeah, it makes security very accessible.
Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about, we almost kind of joked about, okay, we're not going to let it actually do things and make decisions, but that is where we're seeing some of the market going. We're seeing some folks that are willing to trade off, the old um, availability stopgap. Where IT, that's their primary concern. Uh, you know, Avoiding downtime at all costs.
Hmm.
To more of a risk versus availability, kind of decision approach. Where okay, maybe for these use cases, we if it's an individual's account and not an executive, yeah, we're going to err on the side of caution and lock somebody out and actually
Yeah.
take, or maybe isolate a machine, versus the opposite. Is that where you see some of this going in the future?
Yeah.
Is once people have enough confidence that it's going to make the right move most of the time, right?
The interesting thing is that we have already been doing this, but we've been doing it in a more simplistic way. So, at Sentinel One, we have something called our static AI engine, which was one of our first innovations. It's a supervised machine learning engine that's been trained on like a 500 million malware samples to now automatically identify malware based on the characteristics of the file. Um, and you can set the static AI engine in our platform to protect mode. And when you do that, it will automatically kill any of the malicious processes spawned by that detected malware file, and it will automatically quarantine that file. And
Mhm.
originally, Sentinel One was an endpoint security company. We've expanded now into cloud security, identity security, and we actually have customers, big customers, Fortune 500, very sophisticated cloud security engineering teams that are running it in protect mode in their production cloud environments on their mission critical or business critical workloads. And so, this is a form of automation, right? It's automatically, killing and quarantining malware and the offending processes. But it's a simple step. It's sort of a one step decision.
Yeah.
And the big change that is happening right now is the fact that these AI systems can do some reasoning. You can give them goals and they can break down those goals into tasks and autonomously figure out what the right path is to accomplish those tasks using reasoning. This is all part of like an agent framework that would be embedded within a larger generative AI system. So now you're able to give them more complex decisions to go out and try to tackle. That might take multi-step decision making and require a collection of multiple forms of evidence before that decision is taken. So, um, yeah, like I said, I mean, right now we're focused on investigations and automating that, but I do envision more and more automation happening also in the response and remediation actions. But once again, it will be sort of a gradual glide path, starting with less risky things. And you could think about mitigation actions in sort of a 2 by 2 matrix. Things that have the potential to break stuff versus the things that don't have potential to break stuff,
Right.
and things that are in production workloads or production accounts versus dev accounts. And you can start to sort of decide via that sort of quick risk matrix about where you want to automate mitigations or response actions.
Right. Yeah, and it makes sense. On one end of the spectrum, you have a developer's laptop, and on the other end, you have the mission critical production database, server. For example, and one of them, protect mode's easier to turn on than the other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
them, new software is almost never introduced, and the other, it's almost constantly introduced. Or I'm not even a developer, but I'm part of what I do in cybersecurity, having a podcast and things like that is I'm always trying out new things. So, it would be, and I've done product testing before, and I know from experience I can't turn that stuff on some of my systems because I've got sample malware that I use for product testing. I've got all kinds of nasty stuff intentionally, in some of my Dropbox and different repositories that I need to test things out. But yeah, so another aspect of this that I wanted to touch on before we have to let you go, I've done almost 3 dozen advisory calls with companies who are piloting Microsoft Copilot. So more of a general purpose enterprise
Mhm.
RAG on top of an LLM. And I've noticed there's a lot of concern around uh, it's not that there's a lack of transparency. I think it's just new, how generative AI works. And just, and this applies to ML too. Uh, y- do you run into a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions of how these models get trained, what kind of data goes into them? The whole privacy aspects of it, companies worried about typing something into a prompt, or, you mentioned multimodal, maybe uploading a PDF into, I don't know if you can do that with Purple AI, like what the input options are, but people seem very concerned about uh, input becoming output
Yeah.
for other, cross tenant for other customers and things like that.
Yeah. 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 So we have a set of design principles for Purple AI that we take very seriously, and one of the top ones is transparency. And it's both transparency um, in terms of showing customers how Purple derived its results. So, like, we always try to
Mm,
make sure that Purple shows its work. So if it's is translate a natural language command, what is the power query that it used to then query the database? If it's pulling in third-party sources as part of its summary, footnoting those. We're also working on some new things around surfacing confidence levels in terms of the results that we're providing back, but also transparency in how Purple works under the covers. So yeah, we're a RAG architecture as well, and I think it's really important to explain to folks how Purple works under the covers, because having built some previous AI systems in my history that were more black boxes, the more black boxy something is, the less folks will trust the outputs.
right.
Um, And so, in terms of Purple's architecture, we actually use a variety of LLMs. We actually use a constellation of LLMs, and we choose the LLM that's best for the specific
Right.
behavior. It has the best efficacy and cost effectiveness for a specific behavior we're asking the system to do. And we use some different commercial LLMs as well. And for any of those, we have a subprocessor agreement with that provider that anything we send to that provider, they're not allowed to store, they're not allowed to share, they're not allowed to use to improve their models. But in general, the information that's going to the LLM is information that you put into your prompt. Although we do have a proxy architecture, we can strip out different types of information before it goes into the LLM, and but the information that's going into the prompt is usually fairly limited in terms of sensitivity. And then we're using the output of the LLM, which is most typically like a power query that we're telling the LLM to create for us to then go query our data lake. So the information in your data lake does not go into the LLM; that stays in the data lake
Right.
and is protected by all the right regional and logical separations of data that we offer our
Well, you
customers.
you could almost use tokenization here, right? You could take Adrian Sanabria out and put in John Doe, and when
Sure.
it comes back, replace Adrian Sanabria in the results, right? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
change
Exactly.
what that large language model has to do for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that proxy architecture allows us to do. We can strip out sensitive information um, via that proxy.
Yeah. So in general, you talked about trust with AI here. Does it seem to you that trust is a little bit easier to come by because of the consumerization of these tools and the availability of them, or less? Or do you think it's had an impact at all? The fact that people can have ChatGPT on their phone, makes it a little bit easier for them to give Purple AI the thumbs up at work.
Well, I think it's definitely increasing the understanding of our larger customer community about the power of AI. The first times you start playing around with this, it sort of feels like magic, and
Mhm.
um, I think there's also a trend where folks expect security products to, look and feel and behave more like consumer products. Like, I think people are just
Oh,
sort of sick of bad UIs and bad UX, which has plagued the security community for so long. And we actually view Purple as an AI powered control plane into the platform. Like we actually expect that as we add more and more capabilities to Purple, it will be the primary way folks interface with our platform. You'll just go ask Purple, like, hey, what's important in my dashboards today that I need to know about, as opposed to going to the dashboard page. Just let Purple do the work for you. Sort of like when I wake up in the morning, I could go open up my phone and look at my weather app to see what the weather is, but I usually just wake up and ask Alexa to tell me what
right.
the weather is. I think we'll see that same sort of trend inside security operations.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example too, because that's you're talking about high stakes versus low stakes. Like if it's wrong about the chance of rain or off a few degrees about the temperature, you don't really care, right? Or you wouldn't even notice. It wouldn't even be visible to you as long as it's not way off, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So those are the use cases you go after, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, start with the low risk items, and then as we gain more and more confidence via usage, then we're
Mhm.
going to do more and more interesting things.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you announce at RSA. I wish we had a little more time for questions, but I know we got to let you go. But Eli, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Awesome, a lot of fun. Thanks.
And make sure you visit securityweekly.com/Sentinel-1 to learn more. and keep an eye on their announcements at RSA. I'm interested to see where this is going. All right, and stick around. Coming up next, we've got an interview with Adam Shostak about threat modeling and understanding inherent threats.